8 silent behaviors that make toxic people fear you. The people who tried to manipulate you. The ones who made you question your own reality. They didn't stop because you fought back. They stopped because you did something that terrified them far more than any confrontation ever could. And most people have no idea they're even doing it. I spent years studying behavioral psychology and working with people who are recovering from toxic relationships, partners, family members, coworkers, so-called friends. And here's what I discovered. Toxic people don't fear your anger. They don't fear your arguments. They fear your silence. Not the silent treatment. That's manipulation. I'm talking about something completely different. I'm talking about the quiet, powerful behaviors that signal you've become unmanipulatable. And today, I'm breaking down the 8 behaviors that make toxic people realize they've lost their power over you, and why each one works at a psychological level most people never understand. Now, before we dive in, I need you to understand something crucial. These aren't tactics. You can't fake these behaviors. They're natural byproducts of genuine psychological growth. When you develop these 8 behaviors, toxic people don't just feel uncomfortable around you, they actively avoid you. And that's exactly the point. Let's start with the first one, and this might surprise you. Number 1, you stop reacting to their emotional bait. But here's what most people get wrong about this. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending not to care. It's about something neuroscientists call emotional disengagement from toxic stimuli. Here's how it works. Toxic people operate like emotional slot machines. They pull different levers: guilt, rage, sudden affection, criticism, and they're constantly scanning your face for the jackpot reaction. That reaction is their reward. It confirms they still have access to your nervous system. When you've genuinely healed, your brain literally stops categorizing their behavior as important. It's like how you don't have an emotional reaction to a car alarm 3 blocks away. You hear it, you note it, you move on. Let me give you a specific example. Michael, 41, had a mother who would call him right before important business presentations with manufactured crises. Your father might be sick. Your brother needs money right now. How could you not visit me last weekend? For years, Michael would spend hours on these calls, heart racing, cortisol flooding his system, sometimes even canceling meetings. His reaction time? Immediate. His emotional intensity? Maximum. That's what she was farming. After 2 years of therapy and boundary work, here's what changed. She called with the same script. Michael listened calmly for 30 seconds and said, "Mom, I hear you're upset. I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you tonight at 7." Then he hung up. No guilt, no explanation, no emotional spike. His mother later told his sister, "Something's wrong with Michael. He's different. He doesn't care anymore." But the truth is, he cared more about his own life. He just stopped caring about performing emotional labor for her entertainment. If you keep reacting, here's the hidden cost most people miss. You're training them that your boundaries are negotiable through emotional intensity. Every time you engage with their chaos, you're sending a signal. Try harder, louder, more dramatic. You can still get in. And this creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive reward pattern in existence. It's the same mechanism that keeps people gambling.
Here's the neuroscience. When you repeatedly react to toxic behavior, your brain creates a trauma bond circuit. Their chaos becomes the cue, your anxiety becomes the routine, and their temporary calm, or your temporary relief, becomes the reward. Breaking this isn't about willpower. It's about starving the circuit. When you stop providing the reaction, their behavior escalates temporarily. Psychologists call this an extinction burst. They try harder to get the old response. But when you remain consistently flat, something fascinating happens. Their brain realizes this strategy no longer works, and they either leave or they stop trying this specific manipulation with you. Here's how you practice this, starting today. Step 1. Pick one person whose emotional manipulation you're going to stop reacting to. Just one. Don't try to change everything at once. Step 2. Before your next interaction with them, do this 60-second exercise. Visualize their typical manipulation tactic, and then imagine yourself as a smooth stone in a river. The water rushes over you. You don't fight it, you don't absorb it, you just remain. Step 3. In the actual moment, give yourself a single physical anchor. Touch your thumb to your index finger. Take one slow breath, then respond with facts, not feelings. Instead of, "You always make me feel terrible," say, "I hear you're upset. I'm not available to discuss this right now." That's it. No explanation, no defense, no emotional match. Toxic people don't fear your anger. They feed on it. They fear your calm, because calm means you've stopped playing their game. Number 2, you become strategically unavailable without explanation. Now, most people think boundaries are about saying no. They're not. Boundaries are about controlling access to your time, energy, and presence. And toxic people are obsessed with having unrestricted access to you. Here's the psychology. Toxic individuals operate on what's called narcissistic supply. They need constant access to your attention, validation, or emotional reactions to regulate their own internal state. When you become unpredictably unavailable, you disrupt their entire system. Jennifer, 29, worked with a colleague, let's call her Rachel, who would text her constantly outside work hours. Not emergencies, just commentary. Gossip about other coworkers, personal drama, requests for validation. Jennifer used to respond within minutes because she felt guilty not responding. That's the trap. Then Jennifer did something subtle but powerful. She started randomly not responding. Not to punish Rachel, not passive-aggressively. She just stopped being consistently available. Sometimes she'd respond in 3 hours. Sometimes the next day. Sometimes not at all. No sorry I was busy. No justification, just selective presence. Within 6 weeks, Rachel stopped texting her outside work. And here's what Rachel said to another coworker. "Jennifer's so flaky lately, I can't rely on her anymore." Translation. Jennifer stopped being my emotional vending machine, and I can't handle it. If you remain constantly available, you become what psychologists call a stable supply source. And once you're categorized this way in a toxic person's mental map, they will defend their access to you aggressively. The hidden cost? You're teaching them that your time has no value, that they're entitled to your immediate response, your dropped plans, your interrupted focus. You're basically training them that you have no life outside of their needs. Here's how it works in their brain. Toxic people have what's called object permanence issues with relationships. Out of sight often means out of mind, but more importantly, out of control. When you're constantly available, they feel secure. When you become inconsistently available, it triggers anxiety in them. They don't feel sadness, they feel loss of control. And instead of building a healthy relationship, they often just move on to someone more accessible. That's not a failure. That's the system working exactly as it should. Here's your action plan. Immediate micro step. You can do this in 5 minutes. Right now, turn off read receipts for specific contacts. Remove their special notification sounds. Make your availability invisible to them. Step 1. Create what I call response windows. Decide, I check messages from this person once per day at 7 p.m. or once every 3 days, whatever boundary feels right. Step 2. Never explain your absence. This is critical. When you return, don't say, "Sorry, I was so busy." Just continue the conversation normally or simply don't respond at all. Step 3. Notice if they ask where you were. That's a red flag.
Healthy people don't track your availability like surveillance. The moment you stop being available on demand, toxic people reveal exactly what they valued about you. Not your personality, not your friendship, just your accessibility. Number 3, you stop explaining yourself. This is the behavior that makes toxic people absolutely spiral because their primary weapon, making you doubt your own perception, only works if you keep defending your reality. Here's the deep psychology. Toxic people use what's called reality distortion tactics. They rewrite history, deny things they said, question your memory, and tell you your feelings are wrong. This is gaslighting. But here's what most people don't understand. Gaslighting only works if you engage in the debate about what's real. The moment you stop explaining, justifying, or defending your truth, their primary weapon becomes useless. David, 36, had a business partner who would make agreements in meetings, then later claim those conversations never happened. David would spend hours going through emails, finding witnesses, building his case, exhausting himself to prove reality. One day, during another gaslighting episode, David tried something different. His partner said, "We never agreed to that pricing structure." Old David would have pulled up emails, explained the context, defended his memory. New David said, "I remember it differently." Then he stopped talking. His partner pushed. "Well, you're remembering wrong. Show me where we discussed this." David, "I don't need to show you. I know what was agreed to, and I'm moving forward accordingly." Then he left the conversation. His partner later complained to others that David had become impossible to reason with. But here's what really happened. David stopped giving his power away by debating reality with someone who is weaponizing confusion. Every time you explain or defend yourself to someone who's arguing in bad faith, you're doing two things. One, you're signaling that their opinion of your reality matters more than your own experience. Two, you're providing them with information about your vulnerabilities, which they'll use to craft better manipulation next time. The hidden cost is your epistemic confidence, your trust in your own ability to perceive reality accurately. Over time, constant explaining erodes this. You start second-guessing everything. Here's what happens neurologically. When someone challenges your reality and you defend it, your brain enters threat response mode. Your prefrontal cortex, your logical thinking center, gets hijacked by your amygdala, your fear center. In this state, you're actually less capable of logical argumentation, which is exactly when toxic people strike hardest. They're not confused, they're farming your confusion. When you refuse to explain, their tactic fails. They're left holding a weapon that requires your participation. It's like trying to play tennis when the other person won't return the ball. Here's how you practice this today. Step 1. Identify one recurring situation where you find yourself over-explaining to someone who never seems satisfied with your explanation. Write it down. Step 2. Create 3 exit phrases you can use. I'm not going to debate this. I've shared my perspective. That's where I'm leaving it. I remember it differently, and that's okay. Step 3, practice the 2-sentence rule. You get to state your reality once in 2 sentences maximum. After that, anything else you say is feeding the manipulation. The micro-commitment. The next time someone asks you to defend yourself, say your piece in 2 sentences, then literally, if you're on the phone, hang up. If you're in person, walk away. If you're texting, stop responding. You're not being rude, you're being free. Stop defending your reality to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Your truth doesn't need their validation. Number 4, you visibly thrive without them. This one is fascinating because it's not something you do to toxic people. It's something you do for yourself that they happen to witness, and it absolutely terrifies them. Here's why. Toxic people build their identity around being central to your life, either as your savior, your problem solver, your critic, or your source of chaos. Their sense of importance comes from believing you need them in some way. When you not only survive without them, but actually flourish, it shatters their entire narrative. It proves that they weren't necessary, they were optional. And for many toxic people, being optional is their worst fear. Let me tell you about Patricia, 44. She divorced a man who spent 15 years telling her she'd fall apart without him. You can't manage money. You're too emotional to make decisions. Who's going to handle the real world stuff? Classic psychological abuse designed to create dependence. Patricia left anyway, and here's what happened in the first year. She got a promotion, started a side business, traveled to 3 countries, went to therapy, and actually addressed her anxiety instead of being told it was just how she is. She didn't post about her ex, didn't bash him publicly, she just lived visibly well. 6 months after the divorce was final, he sent her a message. I see you're doing okay. I guess you didn't need me after all. The subtext was, you were supposed to fail so I could feel necessary. Patricia's response? I'm doing better than okay. I hope you are too. Then she blocked him. That contentment, that genuine, peaceful thriving, was more powerful than any revenge could ever have been. If you hide your healing, if you pretend to struggle to make toxic people comfortable, you're doing something really dangerous. You're sacrificing your authentic life to maintain their delusional narrative. And here's the hidden cost. You start to believe their story about you. If you perform struggle long enough, your brain starts accepting it as identity. You become the person who can't handle life, not because it's true, but because you're method-acting survival when you're actually capable of thriving. Psychologically, this works because of something called cognitive dissonance. Toxic people have built an entire mental framework around you being weak, dependent, or broken. When reality contradicts this framework, their brain experiences actual psychological discomfort. They have 2 choices: update their beliefs, which requires admitting they were wrong and possibly that they caused harm, or remove themselves from the contradictory information, which means avoiding you. Most choose avoidance, and that's perfect. Here's how you apply this. Step 1. Stop downplaying your wins around toxic people. You don't need to brag, just stop diminishing. If you got a promotion, don't say it's not that big a deal. Say thank you and move on. Step 2, invest in one area of your life they criticized or controlled. If they said you were bad with money, take a financial literacy course. If they said you were too sensitive, go to therapy and develop actual emotional intelligence. Step 3, document your growth privately. Keep a simple journal or photo record, not for them, for you. So when doubt creeps in, you have evidence of your progress. The micro commitment? Right now, today, do one small thing that serves your growth that toxic people in your life said you couldn't do or shouldn't do. Buy that book. Sign up for that class. Make that phone call. The best revenge isn't harming them, it's becoming so genuinely happy that you forget revenge was ever an option. Number 5. You follow through with boundaries calmly. Most people think boundaries are about communication. I've told them 100 times. But boundaries aren't communication. Boundaries are actions. Toxic people are excellent at promising change, apologizing dramatically, and negotiating your limits. They're counting on your boundaries being flexible if they just find the right words. When you enforce consequences without anger, without drama, without emotional escalation, you introduce something they can't manipulate: behavioral accountability. Marcus, 38, had a sister who borrowed money constantly and never paid him back. For years, he'd lend her money, get angry when she didn't repay, have a big fight, forgive her, and then repeat the cycle. The anger was part of the dance. It discharged his frustration without actually changing the pattern. Then Marcus did something radical. The next time she asked to borrow $200, he said calmly, "I don't lend money anymore. If you need $200 and I want to help, I'll give it to you as a gift with no expectation of repayment, but I'm not lending." She pushed. "Since when? Why not? I always pay you back." She didn't. "Marcus, this is just my new boundary. I don't lend money." She ended up not taking the gift because it didn't come with the familiar emotional drama. The chaos was the point for her, not the money. 6 months later, she told their mother that Marcus had become cold. No, Marcus had become clear. And to someone addicted to emotional enmeshment, clarity feels like rejection. When you set boundaries but don't enforce them, you're doing something worse than having no boundaries at all. You're teaching toxic people that your words mean nothing and your limits are performance art. They learn to wait out your anger. They learn which apologies work. They learn exactly how much pushing it takes before you fold. The hidden cost? You lose trust in yourself. You become someone who makes threats you don't keep, which erodes your own self-respect. Here's the neuroscience behind this. When you enforce a boundary with anger, the toxic person's brain focuses on your anger, not your boundary. The emotional intensity becomes the story. They can make themselves the victim of your overreaction. When you enforce a boundary with calm, there's nowhere to hide. The consequence is clean. It's not about your emotions. It's about their behavior meeting a predictable result. This is called natural consequences in behavioral psychology. Touch a hot stove, you get burned. The stove doesn't yell at you or guilt you. It just burns. That's the lesson. Here's your implementation guide. Step 1. Choose one boundary you've stated but never actually enforced. Just one. Step 2. Decide the consequence in advance. If they do X, then I will do Y. Make it specific and something you're actually willing to do. If you criticize my parenting, I will leave or end the call. If you show up unannounced, I won't answer the door. If you're more than 30 minutes late without notice, I'll leave. Step 3. The next time they test it, enforce it immediately and calmly. Don't warn, don't threaten. Just do it, and then don't explain, don't apologize, don't process it with them. The micro-commitment: think of one boundary you keep threatening. Now ask yourself, am I actually willing to enforce this? If not, stop saying it. If yes, write down exactly what enforcement looks like. Boundaries enforced with calm are infinitely more powerful than boundaries shouted in anger. One is a limit, the other is just noise. Number 6. You genuinely stop caring what they think of you. Now, I'm not talking about performing indifference or pretending not to care. Toxic people can smell fake detachment from a mile away. I'm talking about the real deep psychological shift where their opinion of you loses its power to define you. Here's why this terrifies them. Most toxic people maintain control through a system of approval and withdrawal. They train you to seek their validation, then they meter it out strategically. Withhold approval, and you chase. Give a crumb of approval, and you're grateful. When their opinion genuinely doesn't matter to you anymore, this entire system collapses. They become powerless. Amy, 22, worked for a boss, let's call him Richard, who used criticism like a weapon. He'd publicly question her competence, then privately tell her she was his best employee. Classic hot-cold manipulation designed to keep her seeking his approval. Amy would go home and obsess over his comments. Did I mess up? What does he really think? How do I prove myself? Then Amy started seeing a therapist who asked her one question. If Richard thought you were terrible at your job, but your metrics were excellent, and other industry leaders were trying to recruit you, would his opinion matter? That question changed everything. Amy started focusing on objective performance data instead of Richard's mood. She stopped explaining herself in meetings. She stopped staying late to prove dedication. Within 3 months, Richard called her into his office and said, "You've changed. You don't seem as invested anymore." Amy's response? "My work speaks for itself. If there's a performance issue, let's discuss specific metrics." Richard didn't have specific metrics because her performance was excellent. What he had was losing control over her self-perception, and he couldn't handle it. Amy left 6 months later for a 40% salary increase. Richard's opinion of her departure? Irrelevant. If you keep seeking validation from toxic people, here's what happens. You hand them the remote control to your self-worth. They can turn it up, turn it down, change the channel whenever it serves them. The hidden cost is your authentic self. You become so focused on managing their perception that you lose track of who you actually are. You perform personality instead of living it. Neuroscientifically, this works through something called social reward circuitry. Your brain is wired to care about social approval. It's evolutionary. Historically, social rejection meant potential death. But here's the thing. Toxic people hijack this system. They trigger your social approval needs, then exploit them. When you genuinely stop caring about their opinion, you're not rewiring your need for all approval. You're specifically revoking their access to that system in your brain. You're saying, your opinion is no longer a meaningful data point in my self-assessment. Here's how you develop genuine indifference. Step 1. Make a list of whose opinions actually matter to you. Pick 3 to 5 people whose judgment you trust because they know you well, want your growth, and have demonstrated wisdom. These are your board of directors. Step 2. When the toxic person criticizes you or praises you, run it past your mental board. Would any of these people agree? If not, the feedback is probably more about them than you. Step 3. Practice this mantra. You're entitled to your opinion of me. I'm entitled to not care. Not out loud, internally, just for you. The micro-commitment? The next time the toxic person offers unsolicited feedback about you, don't defend, don't explain. Just say, "Okay," or "Thanks for sharing," and move on. Practice making their opinion land on you like water on a raincoat. It just rolls off. The moment you stop needing their approval is the moment you become uncontrollable. And people who need to control you hate nothing more. Number 7. You create experiences, relationships, and joy that exist completely outside their awareness. This is about information boundaries. Toxic people gather information about your life like intelligence operatives. They ask questions, monitor social media, use mutual friends as sources. Why? Because information is control. When you start building parts of your life they don't know about, friendships they haven't met, hobbies they don't know you have, goals they haven't heard about, you create something they can't manipulate, criticize, or sabotage. Let me tell you about Daniel, 35. He had a father who would ridicule any interest Daniel developed. Wanted to learn guitar? You're too old to start. Interested in cooking? That's not masculine. Starting a business? You'll fail like everything else. For years, Daniel either abandoned interests or spent enormous energy defending them to his father. Then Daniel tried something different. He just stopped sharing. He took a woodworking class and never mentioned it. Started a side business and kept it private. Made new friends his father never met. 9 months later, his father asked why Daniel seemed distant. Daniel said, "I'm not distant. I'm just busy with my life." His father, "What are you so busy with? You never tell me anything anymore." Daniel, "There's a lot you don't need to know." That sentence, "There's a lot you don't need to know," was the moment Daniel reclaimed his right to privacy. His father was furious because information withdrawal is a power shift toxic people can't tolerate. When you share everything with toxic people, you give them ammunition. Every dream becomes something to mock. Every relationship becomes something to interfere with. Every vulnerability becomes a weapon. The hidden cost? You start self-censoring not just what you share, but what you pursue. You avoid opportunities because explaining them feels exhausting. You limit your life to what they can accept. Psychologically, this is about compartmentalization, but healthy compartmentalization. You're not splitting your identity. You're simply recognizing that not everyone deserves full access to all of you. Toxic people experience your privacy as rejection because they operate on an enmeshment model where they believe they're entitled to complete transparency. Healthy people understand that privacy is respect, not secrecy. When you build a life they can't access, you're demonstrating something profound. Your life is not a public resource for their consumption. Here's your action plan. Step 1. Audit what you share. For the next 2 weeks, notice when you feel compelled to share information with the toxic person. Before you do, ask, does this sharing serve me, or am I seeking approval or avoiding criticism? Step 2. Develop at least one interest or friendship they know nothing about. This is your safe zone, something that belongs entirely to you. Step 3. Practice the phrase, it's just something I'm working on, or I'm keeping that private for now. You don't owe anyone an inventory of your inner life. The micro-commitment. Right now, think of one thing in your life, a goal, a relationship, a hobby, that you're going to stop updating the toxic person about. Don't announce this, just stop sharing. See how it feels to have something that's just yours. The most powerful boundary isn't what you say no to, it's what you never give them access to in the first place. Number 8, and this is the one that encompasses all the others. You carry yourself with quiet, unshakable self-worth. This isn't arrogance, it's not superiority, it's something much more powerful. It's knowing your value independent of anyone else's assessment. Here's the deep psychology. Toxic people are attracted to people who seek external validation because those people are easy to control. They can be love-bombed, then criticized, then love-bombed again. Their self-worth bounces around like a ping-pong ball. When you develop genuine internal self-worth, the kind that doesn't need defending, doesn't need performing, doesn't need anyone's agreement, you become fundamentally incompatible with toxic dynamics. I want to tell you about Elena, 28. She grew up in a family system where love was conditional on achievement. A's got praise, B's got lectures. She spent her 20s chasing accomplishments to feel worthy. Then she lost her job during an economic downturn, no fault of her own. But her family's reaction? What did you do wrong? Why weren't you essential? You must not have been working hard enough. Elena hit rock bottom, but something shifted in that bottom. She realized, if my worth only exists when I'm succeeding by their standards, then I never actually had worth in their eyes. I had usefulness. She started going to therapy, started meditating, started building an identity separate from productivity. She took a lower-paying job that had better work-life balance. She stopped chasing her family's approval. When she saw them at holidays, they'd ask, "So, what are you doing now? Still at that little company?" Old Elena would have gotten defensive, explained her strategic plan, justified her choices. New Elena said, "Yeah, I'm really happy there." And then she changed the subject. That undefended contentment, that "I don't need to prove anything to you" energy, it made her family so uncomfortable that eventually they just stopped asking. They couldn't manipulate someone who didn't need their validation to feel whole. If you keep outsourcing your self-worth to toxic people, here's what happens. You become a permanent volunteer in a game you can never win, because toxic people don't withhold validation because you're not good enough. They withhold it because keeping you uncertain is how they maintain control. The hidden cost is your life, your actual, precious, finite life spent trying to earn acceptance from people who are fundamentally incapable of giving it. Neurologically, self-worth is built through something called earned secure attachment, initially with caregivers, but it can be developed later through therapy, healthy relationships, and consistent self-compassion. When you have secure self-worth, your brain doesn't enter threat mode when someone criticizes you. You can evaluate feedback without your entire nervous system going into meltdown. You can be wrong without feeling worthless. Toxic people need you to have insecure self-worth because that's the vulnerability they exploit. When you develop secure self-worth, you literally remove the entry point for their manipulation. Here's how you build unshakable self-worth. Step 1. Identify your core values. Not what you're good at, not what others value, what matters to you. Write down 3 to 5 values. These are your North Star. Step 2. Make decisions based on these values, not on others' approval. When you have to choose, ask, which option aligns with my values? Then do that. Step 3. Practice self-compassion actively. When you make a mistake, talk to yourself like you talk to a friend. Your inner dialogue creates your self-worth foundation. The micro-commitment. Right now, complete this sentence and mean it. I am worthy of respect, love, and kindness because I exist, not because I've earned it. Say it out loud. Feel how weird and radical and true it is. Toxic people don't leave when you fight back. They leave when you stop fighting for their validation. They leave when you become so secure in yourself that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Remember at the beginning when I said toxic people didn't stop because you fought back? They stopped because you did something that terrified them? These 8 behaviors are that something. Not reacting to their chaos, becoming selectively unavailable, refusing to defend your reality, thriving visibly without them, enforcing consequences calmly, genuinely not caring what they think, building a life they can't access, and carrying unshakable self-worth. None of these are tactics you perform. They're natural expressions of healing. They're what happens when you stop giving your power away. And here's what I want you to understand. You don't develop these behaviors to make toxic people leave. You develop them to become free, and their departure is just a side effect of your liberation. If you're in the middle of this journey right now, if you're practicing these behaviors and it feels hard, I want you to know that's normal. You're literally rewiring your nervous system. You're breaking trauma bonds. You're becoming someone new. And that person is someone toxic people can't touch. Next time, I'm going to show you the 5 sentences toxic people say when they realize they're losing control over you and exactly how to respond to each one, because recognizing the patterns is half the battle. Until then, remember, the most powerful thing you can do is become so deeply okay with yourself that their games become boring. You've got this.